Coming to paperback and e-readers, Spinsterella Goth Girl Summer. Take a trip into the macabre world of goth modeling in the new millennium in this all-new Spinsterella story. Pre-order your copy of Spinsterella Goth Girl Summer at Amazon.com and other online booksellers everywhere. I was watching an Angela Benedict video last Sunday that gave me some perspective on why I was bullied in the 1980s. Now, in this video called Hashtags Are Easy, but Could You Handle the 90s, Angela Benedict talked about growing up in the 1980s in the first part of the video. And as she talked about growing up in the 1980s in the first part of the video, she gave me some understanding of why I was bullied in junior high school and high school in the late 1980s. Now, Angela Benedict was born in 1979, about a year after my cousin who lived in Georgia was born, and she basically showed a perspective of the 1980s that I really had not seen outside of my two cousins. Now, her perspective of the 1980s was one where she observed that people in the 1980s were all about conformity, and that was something that I basically saw back in the 1980s growing up as someone who was born in 1973. Now, as I was born in 1973, I basically grew up experiencing the late 70s and most of the 80s as a child. And as I was growing up in the 1980s, I definitely saw the same things that Angela saw as related to not only there being a lot of wood grains as related to everything and a lot of different fashions, but I also saw the whole social behaviors of the 1980s, and I experienced that social behavior firsthand. And one of the things that the 1980s was all about was about this conformity and everybody looking to fit themselves into the idealized standard of what it meant to be American. And this whole idealized standard basically was something that was lifted all the way from the 1950s. Now, a lot of people had a nostalgia for the 1950s in the late 1970s with movies like American Graffiti and shows like Happy Days, and they looked for those simpler times, but those simpler times were all about a culture of conformity, a rigid culture of conformity where everyone was supposed to fit themselves into the standard of what it meant to be American. And this was where it laid the foundation for why I was bullied in junior high school and high school, because when it came down to the black community had a big major fixation on conforming. Now, in history, the black community in the 1980s was just about 20 years coming out of the Civil Rights Act of 1964 and the Voting Rights Act of 1965, and we were about 25 years coming out of the Civil Rights Movement. And with us coming out of the Civil Rights Movement, a lot of black people had a major fixation on looking to conform and fit themselves into the ideals of what it meant to be American. And as they looked to fit themselves into the ideals of what it meant to be American, some black people just basically became so obsessed with looking to make everyone fit in that they looked to escalate their behavior to extremes. Now, when it came down to these black people, a lot of these black people had this obsession with conforming, because when it came down to black people have, ever since we came to this country, had this obsession with conforming, and an obsession with conforming because we look to, again, gain our acceptance into white society. And that's what basically derailed the entire civil rights movement, was this obsession with conformity, because what many black people wanted to do was conform themselves to fit into gaining the approval and acceptance of white people, because we were only maybe about 25 years into integration, and a lot of people basically feared that they would lose their ability to be able to be a part of society. And because they feared being able to lose their part in society, what happened with a lot of black people is that they just became so driven to the point of obsession, that they were looking to fit everyone into conforming to the standards and ideals of what they believed America to be. And that's what led to what I believe, ironically, people in the black community going from breaking the chains of slavery to putting on mental chains. And as they looked to put on these mental chains, what happened with black people is they became spellbound. And again, this is where they started to look to fit themselves into the black boxes that were acceptable to white people. And as they looked to fit themselves into the black boxes that were acceptable to white people, this is where we saw the black community going into this obsession with conformity to the point where we dehumanized other black people and dehumanized other black people to the point where we had black people oppressing other black people. Now, I know that sounds quite strange to some people, but that's what I experienced growing up in the 1980s. Growing up in the 1980s, this is what I experienced, and I could relate to what Angela was talking about as related to that type of situation, because in the 1980s, it was all about conformity for white people, again, following the ideals of the 1950s. And as they were looking to conform and make everybody fit, this is where people had issues with people like goths and punks and other outsiders. They had issues with those people, and they looked to ostracize those people and looked to make them not be a part of their social circles. Now, it even got worse with people who had what were mental health issues or perceptions about being mentally ill. This is something people did, again, looking to avoid even mentioning any person who had any sort of mental disorder. It wasn't even talked about, or that person was not socially accepted. And that's what I basically saw and experienced growing up in the 1980s. And that's what I believe was the foundation of why I was bullied in junior high school and high school. Now, when it came down to junior high school and high school, a lot of people, again, had an issue with me. They had an issue with me, I'd say, even growing in the 6th grade, because, again, I was considered to be, again, different because I had the brain aneurysm and I just didn't understand anything about it. And because people didn't understand brain aneurysms, and again, at 11 years old, I didn't understand it, I had a lot of people telling me I had some sort of mental health issue. And this was at a time when I had gone to doctors as related to dealing with the things was related to that brain aneurysm, and people didn't understand it. They didn't understand outside. Again, there was nothing really wrong with me, but because they heard I had a brain operation, people thought there was something wrong with me, and that was part of the issue with me starting in the 6th grade. And again, people, again, in the black community, they had this obsession with conformity, this obsession with looking to fit themselves in, to the point of just obsession, because many black people were afraid of reprisal. Many black people were afraid of the reprisals that black people endured from just the 25 years before civil rights movement as related to the racism people endured, and the nearly almost 400 years of slavery where black people were dehumanized by being tortured and abused on the slave plantation. And all of this basically led to people believing it was okay in the black community to go out here and dehumanize another black person, and try to, again, coerce that person to fit themselves in, so that they could make the world smooth for most of those white people. That's what I saw and experienced firsthand in junior high school, and even in social situations. I mean, there was, again, an obsession with black people fitting themselves in, and again, fitting themselves in because they feared losing all of the freedoms and benefits that they got from the integration as related to the civil rights movement. And again, those insecurities and those fears drove a lot of people and a lot of guys being, again, raised in single mother households, because being raised in a single mother household, there's a heavy focus on being social. And that really was, I believe, what led to a lot of guys looking to bully me at 12 years old and looking to push me into things like having a girlfriend, even though at 12 years old, I didn't even know what sex was, and I didn't even know that what really to be interested in girls. Now, there were girls I had crushes on, but the whole thing, it wasn't something that I was looking to go into. Again, I wanted to grow at my own pace and level and make my own decisions. But in that black community, what I experienced was people looking to try to force and coerce you into getting involved into things that you're not mentally and emotionally ready for, all because they wanted to fit themselves into this black box that was acceptable to white people, and look to fit themselves into this black box that's acceptable to white people, because a lot of them feared that if I did not conform, they would have a focus put on them, and that there would be some sort of reprisal because this person isn't fitting in. That's how intense the peer pressure was in the 1980s as related to conformity. I mean, it was so intense to the point where people were looking to go to extremes like shaming language, telling someone that they're a homosexual, or looking to even put hands on someone. This is what I experienced back at 12 years old, all because I didn't have a girlfriend, and something I didn't understand. And I didn't understand all of this at all, and again, didn't understand any of it at all as related to things, but the whole situation as related to the black community. I mean, this obsession with conformity basically took away our humanity, because again, as we took away our physical chains, we put on mental chains, looking for that social acceptance. And as we were looking for that social acceptance, we were looking to fit ourselves into these black boxes that were acceptable to white people. And these spellbound black people, again, driven with this obsession of acceptance, this obsession with acceptance. Basically, this is why so many black people were looking to go out here and bully and coerce other black people. And again, this was a major part of my development. And again, it just really messed me up in some ways, because it made it where I just was afraid to pursue relationships as related to things, because I feared being, again, stigmatized for being what people thought was mentally ill, and again, wasn't mentally ill, but wound up having to deal with issues of anxiety, dealing with issues of anxiety as related to all of the pressure being put on me to try to force myself to fit into a standard of something that I didn't even understand. That's where I believe the roots of the anxiety I still struggle with today came from, and again, came from because in our 1980s society, it was, again, all about that conformity to, again, make yourself fit into a standard of blackness that basically was not really one that was good. And that was the great irony of the 1980s. You had guys like Bill Cosby looking to show us a larger picture of black life. But in many inner city communities, you had black people looking to try to force us to a standard where we were creating our own standard of Jim Crow, where we were oppressing ourselves to make ourselves be somebody else's standard of black. And that was the great irony, because Bill Cosby was trying to show us that there was a different world out there, a different world than the one we were told about. I mean, the mainstream media, again, wanted to present us their idea of black, but Bill Cosby was trying to show us a different world of black, a larger world of black. And sadly, in the black community, we had a lot of spellbound black people, again, looking to fit themselves into the black boxes that were acceptable to white people, to the point where we dehumanized ourselves to not only bully and coerce people to be be the white supremacist standard of black, but also look to go out here and, as we breathe brand new life into stereotypes, go out here and participate in antisocial behaviors such as the whole crack epidemic, where we had black people selling poison to each other and killing each other. That was the saddest part about that whole situation of life in the 1980s. The irony was, as we were trying to conform ourselves to the standard that was there, we basically, again, dehumanized people, and again, dehumanized people to the point where we bullied and coerced people in an effort to force them to be something that they weren't allowed to be, and even in a greater irony, again, took away the freedoms of black people, to be able to explore the world and be able to express ourselves. That's what was taken away from a lot of black people in inner city neighborhoods by these bullies who, again, wanted to control us, and again, control us to make us fit ourselves in and conform to ideals and standards many of us didn't even understand. And that was one of the sad parts about growing up in the 1980s. Again, as I was bullied, I really never got that chance to really go out here and explore and make those choices as related to life, and like doing things like having a relationship, because a person isn't supposed to be coerced into having a girlfriend. No, having a girlfriend is something that is a personal choice. It's a personal choice a person makes based on a personal connection they have with another person. And that was, again, where I got some scars as related to my own development, again, as related to things, because you have people who want to tell you that you need to have a girlfriend, and you're only 12 years old. You're just still trying to figure out what time G.I. Joe and Transformers are going to come on and what episode is going to come on. That's what you're trying to figure out. And as I'm doing that, I'm trying to figure out how to deal with this whole situation with this brain aneurysm, people thinking that I'm mentally ill, and I'm not mentally ill. I mean, I got better grades than most people in school, and I never, and the thing that the whole situation, again, I was still trying to, again, try to be whatever normal was, and trying to figure out things. I mean, that's where I really feel like I lost a lot, because I never got that chance to decide for myself. And that's what happens to a lot of black people. We never got that chance to decide for ourselves. No, we were told, oh, you've got to do things this way. You've got to fit yourself in. You've got to conform to these standards. And this derailed a lot of the development of young black boys and young black men. So they didn't go out here and look to be themselves. That's what the whole spellbound mindset did to both boys and girls, because they were looking to conform, fitting themselves into these boxes, whether it be the box of the thug, the box of the hood rat, the box of the gangster, the box of the dope boy. Again, these were pre-made ideas of what black was, but you couldn't be the black person you wanted to be. Now, I was, again, a shy kid who was a comic collector and was into comic books and science fiction and wrestling. I mean, you couldn't be that. No, that was considered being white, and that's what people, again, wanted to hurt somebody for, because, again, they want you to fit into the box that's black. They want you to fit into the box that's black because they want to have that smooth world, because they fear white reprisal. They fear white reprisal to the point where they go to the extreme of looking to put hands on someone for not fitting in. I mean, as Angela was talking about, again, a white person or a non-black person, they could be an outsider and, again, still have a life in a place like the goth scene or the punk scene. But in the black community, this was life or death, and that was another cause as related to the pressures of anxiety. Again, the pressures of anxiety, because you basically feared for your life if you did not conform. You feared for your life because instead of you having to deal with the white Ku Klux Klansman, you had to deal with the chocolate Klansman. And again, the chocolate Klansman, whether he was the gangbanger, the thug, the dope dealer, again, could take your life, and take your life because all you did was go out here and be yourself, or try to figure out who you are. that's what was the scary part about growing up in the 80s and being bullied. Again, you could go out here and wind up with people threatening your life, all because you were just trying to figure out who you wanted to be, and trying to figure out what you wanted to do, because everyone wanted to fit you into a box, that would make the world smooth for white people, but kept you from being the actualized black person. And that's the type of oppression black people suffered due to the spellbound mindset where we didn't see a value in each other as human beings, and didn't see a value in each other as people, didn't see humanity in each other, didn't see love for each other, and it was really sad. I mean, that's the progress that black people made that I actually see as a social regression. See it as a social regression because what happened with black people is, instead of us having that freedom to be ourselves, we put ourselves in these boxes and basically put ourselves in mental chains. That's why I call it a psychological ghetto, and that's what I experienced. And as I sat there watching Angela's video, it really gave me some perspective, on growing up back then. And that's what I really liked about that video. Now, she was just talking about the 90s and the goth scene, but it really made me think about life in the black community, that whole part of the early part of the video where she talked about the 1980s, because as someone who experienced life in the 1980s, I can tell you that, again, that obsession with conformity was to an extreme to the point where people would pull away from you, again, because they thought that you were different and they didn't want to be around you to a point because they feared that they would get some reprisal from just being around the wrong person. This is what I experienced in the 8th grade, where these guys pulled away from me, told me they didn't want me around, and again, pulled away from me because they thought, oh, this guy is crazy, because they didn't understand that a brain aneurysm doesn't mean that you have brain damage. Now, it could possibly lead to that if things go the wrong way, but that person eventually becomes a vegetable or they die. But if you go through that experience, you're perfectly fine. But people couldn't see that because they wanted to go out here and conform. They wanted to conform, and they cut themselves away from me. I dealt with this when I was 13, dealt with this when I was 16, and again, all that conformity, again, was an obsession because, again, black people, we have this fear of not being accepted by white people, and that keeps us from seeing the humanity of people and not seeing the humanity of people. And that's one of the sad parts of the 1980s. Now, I know a lot of people, they like to idealize the 1980s, but as someone who grew up in the 80s, that was one of the saddest parts about life in the 80s, is that people had this obsession because they were spellbound to fit themselves into these black boxes, to be acceptable to white people, that they couldn't see the humanity of people. And that's where I really started to think about my life back in 2016. Now, 2015, I wrote the first Spinsterella novel about a black goth, and as I wrote that novel, I had to think about Matilda's baby bat years, and as I thought about Matilda's baby bat years, I started thinking about the whole spellbound mindset and wanting people to again fit themselves into these boxes, and this conformity to the point of coercion, to the point where black people were terrorizing each other, and how that terrorizing each other basically led to people doing things like in the novel Spellbound, the way they tormented Matilda, and basically led to her brother Brody, who did fit in, winding up him getting shot by a drug dealer. I mean, because I see that stuff firsthand in the 1980s, and again, that was the whole dark side of the 1980s, just like it was the dark side of the 1950s. Now, in the 1950s, while everybody conformed, there was a whole dark side that led to people winding up becoming so frustrated because they had to keeping up this appearance that people, while they were looking good on the outside, were out here drinking. And again, this is why some white women were in this malaise. They were in a malaise because they never felt like they could be themselves. And they had to keep fitting this standard, and some people, again, while they had a nice marriage on the outside, were having affairs with each other. And again, there were a lot of people frustrated because they were making $62 a week, and their expenses were eating them up, and they went out here looking to escape through vices. So I could see how the 80s and the 50s basically mirrored each other. But as I was watching Angela's video, again, gave me that perspective, gave me that understanding, and I believe helped me to, again, be able to come to a point of getting that understanding of things I didn't understand as a boy, and get that understanding of things that I didn't understand as a boy, to why I was bullied and why these people wanted to take away my choice, take away my ability to be able to express myself, and not really understand how to let somebody be themselves. I mean, that was what's taken away from so many black people. We never got that chance to be able to have that freedom to express ourselves, because many people, again, even to this day, will look to go out here and stigmatize someone because they feel that, oh, this person's gonna mess me up because they are not fitting into that social box that is acceptable to white people. I think that's one of the other reasons why I had a hard time finding jobs, is because you have people who look at you and go, oh, this guy doesn't fit into my standard of what black is. And because this person comes from a different culture, a different set of values, they have an issue with that person. That's what spellbound people have, because spellbound people basically only see what the spell cast on them allows them to see. And if they can't fit you into their ideals, they don't see you as a real person. And because they don't see you as a real person, they believe they have a right to hurt you. They believe they have a right to even look to kill you because they don't see you as a human being. That's the sad part. That was one of the sad things to come out of the 1980s. Again, this whole obsession with conformity in the black community, this obsession where everything has to fit one standard of that is, again, close to whiteness, but still, again, is about meeting a white standard for black, and doesn't allow black people to be themselves. This is why they had issues with people who were black, especially those who they thought were different or they thought had mental health issues, and wanted to ostracize those black people, and wanted to ostracize those black people because they didn't want their smooth world torn apart. But their smooth world was basically the thing that ironically tore apart the black community, because as black people looked to fit themselves in these boxes, they basically became the stereotypes that created the crack epidemic. And basically you had black people killing each other and never seeing the humanity in each other, and looking to conform to the standards of white supremacy. Looking to conform to the standards of white supremacy basically destroyed the black community. And that's what basically flew over the heads of many black people, again, because we couldn't see the humanity in each other. And I really want to thank Angela for re-uploading that video, because it really opened my eyes, or I'd say God opened my eyes, to see the truth of why I was bullied back then, because I didn't have a girlfriend. And it was about more than a girlfriend. It was all about, again, looking to force someone to conform, someone to conform, because I remember being 16 and God telling me that I wasn't ready for a girlfriend, wasn't ready for women at that time. Again, it really all fit in, because again, people want you to conform, but you're not emotionally or mentally ready, because we all grow at our own pace. And when you're a shy or an introverted person, you tend to grow a lot slower. You tend to do things a lot slower because you're still trying to process things. You're trying to figure out things, because again, when it comes to introverts, we tend to be in our heads. And as we're in our heads, we're trying to figure out stuff. And again, this is something many people don't understand, because they want to, again, see you grow at the same pace as another person, but we all don't grow at the same pace as other people. No, introverts tend to do things a little slower, and this is something I talk about in Spellbound and the Spinsterella books, because Matilda, really, she was again 16, and she was trying to find her voice, trying to be able to express herself, and was trying to learn how to say what she wanted to say. And in Spinsterella Goth Girl Summer, you have 26-year-old Matilda. She's not moved out of her parents' home. And again, that's because she's still trying to figure stuff out, in addition to maintaining her position as a Christian, looking to, again, not look to leave her parents' home until she winds up getting married. So I really, again, people don't understand things. Again, when you're looking to conform, sometimes you can wind up hurting someone by looking to rush them into something they're not ready for, and that can really mess a person up, mess a person's development up, lead to them having issues later on that further get exacerbated, like mental health issues and other issues. Again, people try to keep that stuff hidden, but the whole thing is, it basically, you don't understand, okay, you're feeling like something's wrong, you're instinctively feeling like something is wrong, feeling like something's not working, feeling like something isn't right, and the thing that isn't right is that you're basically being forced to do something that you're not really able or ready to do. I mean, you're not able and ready to do whatever people are wanting you to do, and that's the scary part about growing up in the 80s, was people were looking to, again, make you fit into these boxes and be the standard, because they feared that you would mess up things. That's what I experienced when I was in the 6th grade, because I had a teacher who basically wanted everything to be just right. And that was the start of my problems. And again, as I went into junior high school, started having more problems, again, because people want to force things to fit. And I talk about this in my book, Stop Simping. Again, when you try to force something, you wind up breaking things. And again, in the black community, we wound up breaking a lot of people, and again, breaking a lot of people's lives, because we had this obsession with conformity. And as we had this obsession with conformity, we didn't see the humanity in each other. And that was the saddest part about the growing up in the 1980s, was we couldn't see the people who we were hurting, and we couldn't see how we were making their lives just that much harder. That's what I grew up dealing with as related to things. One of the, again, the reasons I have anxiety is because you fear getting hurt by someone who doesn't see you fitting in, and because they don't see you fitting in, they look to go out here and look to eliminate you from any sort of circle, whether it be a social circle, whether it be a business circle. They don't really see you as a person, and because they don't see you as a person, they don't believe that you have a right to live. They don't believe that you have a right to work. They don't believe you have a right to be treated with respect, or treated or seen as someone who deserves to have basic human dignity. That's what happens in the black community in the 1980s that I basically see still going on. I mean, people wanting their smooth world and their conformist world. They basically, again, don't really see anyone else. And that's the saddest part about things growing up being a black man in the 1980s. I mean, that's what I saw growing up as a black boy. I mean, growing up and seeing that, I mean, and again, seeing it because, you know, it was really sad. I mean, this is what I experienced. This is what I grew up with. And I really was dealing with trying to process it for a long time, trying to process it, trying to understand it, trying to figure it out. And at 51, I finally have figured most of it out, thanks to, again, back in when I was 30 years old, I learned that the brain aneurysm isn't something that has any connection to mental health outside of the person who winds up becoming a vegetable, where they cannot, again, even function, because, again, there are 3 fates for brain aneurysms. You can either die, you can become a vegetable, or you can just survive it and continue to go on. And that gave me some understanding. But the other thing I was trying to figure out for many years is why so many people wanted to bully me, because I didn't have a girlfriend at 12 years old. And I now finally understand that it was all about this obsession with conformity, from spellbound black folks, spellbound in that they were caught up in this quest for white acceptance that came from the civil rights movement, again. And people were obsessed to the point where, again, the great tragedy is we were oppressing each other and terrorizing each other. And instead of us having that freedom to be ourselves, we couldn't be ourselves because we still were dealing with the legacy of white supremacy. And the sad part is, again, this oppression of each other. And I thank God that I did get to watch that video because it gave me a greater understanding of what it meant to be, what it meant to grow up in the 1980s and the type of bullying that I encountered. Now, I wrote all about that type of 1980s bullying in my novel, Spellbound, and you can learn more about the spellbound mindset that did damage to a generation of Gen Xers in the 1980s as we had this obsession with conformity. You can learn more about that whole issue as related to history by picking up my novel Spellbound, and you can find Spellbound in paperback and Kindle format on Amazon.com. You can also find it at other online booksellers like Draft to Digital, Google Play, Barnes & Noble, and big box retailers like Walmart and Target. And if you want to check out the entirety of Matilda's story as she goes from being a shy girl who finds her voice to winding up being herself and actualizing her potential, you can read all of Matilda's stories, starting with Spellbound, and then following it up with the legendary Mad Matilda to Spinsterella Goth Girl Summer, and finally Spinsterella. And you can find all of those books that chronicle Matilda's journey into the goth subculture on Amazon.com. In paperback and Kindle format. You can also find them at other online booksellers like Draft to Digital, Google Play, and big box retailers like Walmart and Target. And if you want to check out the vampire novel that's connected to the Spinsterella series, Eternal Night, you can find that book as well at all the online booksellers I mentioned. Now, if you want to help me be able to make more videos on this channel and stay on the air and talk about different subjects, you can drop a donation to the Patreon, the PayPal, or the Cash App to help me stay on the air by clicking the link in the description box. That's all I have to say for this video. You can comment, rate, and subscribe. Now available in paperback and e-readers, Spellbound, A Darker Shade of Black. Get your copy today at your favorite online bookseller. Now available in paperback and e-readers, John Haynes, 1987. Learn lessons about life and teenage love in the 1980s in this coming-of-age John Haynes story. Get your copy of John Haynes 1987 in paperback and e-readers at Amazon.com and online booksellers everywhere. Support Black-owned and Black-operated digital broadcast media. www.niceradionetwork.com. Nice Radio Network broadcasting 24 hours a day, 7 days a week.